Excuse me?
This guy sucks.
Excuse me? This is going to sound weird, but am I supposed to be able to hear you guys?
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Peacemaker Season 2. We're going to be discussing the Season 2 premiere today. Right out the gate, Patrick, I just want to say, I think this is one of the most interesting shows on TV, not because of like the content of the show necessarily, but because of how it is tying in to James Gunn's new DCU, right? The original Peacemaker was a spin-off of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which didn't even do that well at the box office. It's kind of like this side project. And since then, James Gunn has ascended to the head of DC and is now in charge of the whole universe. And Peacemaker Season 2 seems to be like a pretty critical component of it. And it is a direct continuation of Superman, which just came out in theaters a month ago. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how they tie in, because season 1 premiered 3 years ago, started in a different era of DC. Now season 2 premieres, right, in a new era that James Gunn is running. Pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, we're going to talk all about it. But first, let me start by recapping how we got to this point. It took me a while to get into Peacemaker Season 1 because the DC universe was such a catastrophic mess at the time, right? But now, hot on the heels of a fairly successful box office run for the new Superman, it's seemingly become a linchpin in James Gunn's new DC universe. Season 1 of Peacemaker was actually a fairly self-contained affair. When we last left off with this ragtag group of misfits, Chris Smith, a.k.a. Peacemaker, had just helped Argus save the world through Project Butterfly. Turns out an alien species that looked like butterflies were infiltrating people's bodies and using them to take over the planet. In the climactic scene, one of the butterflies tells Chris that they're actually trying to save humanity because their own species made the same terrible decisions we did. But Chris goes against basically everything he previously believed in and decides humans should get to make their own self-destructive decisions. And also, he doesn't want his friends to be hurt. So he kills their food source, ending the saga. Chris's friend Leota confesses on TV about the details of Task Force X, in which prisoners at Belle Reed Prison are used to fight crime, led by her mom, Amanda Waller. And as season 1 wrapped up, Adrian, a.k.a. Vigilante, was at large. John Economos was back working at Belle Reed Prison. Leota Adebayo was back with her girlfriend. Argus agent and romantic interest Amelia Harcourt was recovering from injuries in the hospital. And Peacemaker himself was making peace with his white supremacist father, Augie's death, as well as the fact that his father goaded him into killing his own brother, Keith, while they were just kids. The new season does a reset of a lot of the stuff I just said. It's 6 months later. Leota and her girlfriend are the outs. Harcourt and Peacemaker are on the outs, despite their tender moment at the hospital at the end of last season. One episode has aired. We're going to be covering the show all season. This review will contain minor spoilers for James Gunn's Superman. So, Patrick Klepek, let's just start by talking about what you think about the show so far after one episode.
I'm fascinated. It's a little shaggy to start, just because I think this show is trying to do a lot. Although it's hard to tell. I can't tell if is this actually a linchpin? Is this actually super important to the future of James Gunn's DCU? Or is it just the next thing that's come after Superman? And in retrospect, it's like, oh, actually, this ends up being fairly self-contained. I hope it's the latter. If it can do some cleanup, if it can do some work that sort of stitches things together and puts it in the direction that Gunn wants to, that's great. But it would be a tragedy for the first season of Peacemaker, which I really, really enjoyed. It felt like the most James Gunn post once he became into like the public consciousness with Marvel, but like this dude comes from trauma. Like he comes from a much gnarlier history. Like, go watch Super, right? Like his interpretation of superheroes and gore and violence and sex really, it leaks out a bit in Guardians and a little more into the Suicide Squad, but like Peacemaker's really where you get kind of a throwback to old James Gunn. And that's what I like so much about the first season. That's what I'm hoping I get from the second season. And I can't shake the worry that as much as James Gunn wants to say, I've learned all the lessons of Marvel, I'm not sure you can learn those lessons till you got to walk that path yourself. And we won't know the answers to that to the end of the season. But that first episode alone feels like I'm just back with these really interesting sets of characters. It's violent. It's chaotic. When Gunn says they're going to be tonally different in different DC projects, boy, he's right. My children, I'm very liberal with what my children watch. I'm not going to let them watch Peacemaker or become aware of it. But I'm having a lot of fun. but I think it remains to be seen whether it can learn the lessons the Gunn says he's learned from Marvel and apply that to his own universe.
Well, I think what is great is Peacemaker season 1 is enjoyable as its own standalone independent creation. I suspect that will be true of Peacemaker season 2. I mean, it's obviously connected to the events of season 1. So like you need to have watched season 1 to fully get it. But you don't necessarily need to have watched Superman so far, at least. Like maybe that will become a thing in future episodes. And yeah, my guess is there will be kind of tangential references that kind of tie in, but you don't necessarily have to watch all the stuff in the DC universe for this to make sense. But there are characters from the new Superman that show up in this movie. In this TV show. And so it'll be a thing where hopefully to maximize enjoyment, you watch everything, but you don't have to watch everything. And I think that would be ideal. I also just want to say this right at the top. I think this is the best integration / crossover we have ever seen between a comic book movie and a comic book TV show. Like, I cannot recall the last time we watched a superhero film on the big screen and then within 2 months, a show premiered that referenced events from that movie. The one close one, I guess, would be WandaVision, which premiered in January of 2020. And then Endgame was April of 2019, I think, right? So, like, that was pretty close. But, like... And
it's
then
it's not a handoff in the same, and even this isn't a direct handoff, but it feels much more deliberate. Whereas like Marvel was figuring that out, this feels much more part of what is it they're calling this phase 1 sort of gods and monsters, right? Like, and some of that plan has shifted as Gunn has actually sort of settled into it. This really does feel like we're in the hands of a plan, and we're watching that plan play out. And Peacemaker being so soon after Superman is not an accident; it's part of an architect, and that's exciting.
Yeah, as opposed to the MCU TV shows, which really feel like they're just figuring it out as they go along. Like, I do not feel there's been some good seasons of TV, there have been some good episodes, but I do not feel like the MCU TV experiment has gone well overall by their own admission. And so this is actually, in my opinion, much more sophisticated so far than what MCU
Peacemaker wasn't a tiny movie, right? Like that's like often I felt like the MCU stuff has been a problem for many reasons, but often it just feels like, oh, I guess we're doing a television version of like what could have been a film, and doesn't feel like it understands the form, doesn't understand the advantages of being episodic and like taking advantage of TV as an art form. Season 1 of Peacemaker, there's nothing about that I got to the end. It's like, boy, this would have been better as an hour and 45 minute film. Like this was just a damn good season of television that understood the form, which is, a testament that Gunn can walk between both of those worlds, because his fingerprints are all over Superman, all over Peacemaker. But like it's good television, not just something I wish I'd seen on the big screen.
I agree, and one of the great things about the show is you have a great ensemble cast. Like you're spending a lot of time just hanging out with these people, and that is what you do in TV shows a lot. And I think these characters all have great chemistry with each other. So, anyway, season 2 so far super interesting, and we're going to dive into why exactly that's the case. But we got to start by talking about how they retconned the ending of Peacemaker season 1, right? At the beginning of Peacemaker season 2 premiere, there is a preview. First of all, we see the new DC Universe logo, like Superman breaking through chains, kind of cool. And then there's a previously in the DCU. So they're branding it the DCU now, I believe, right? I
think so, yes.
Officially branding it DCU, and they show a very lengthy, like 3-minute long previously on, which is necessary because the show's been off the air for years. And if you'll recall, at the end of Peacemaker season 1, there is a scene where the Justice League show up, and Peacemaker makes a joke about how, like, oh, you guys showing up late, classic you guys, and then he kind of walks off screen. And I think when I first watched it, I was thinking, oh, it's just going to be their silhouettes. It's not going to be the actual Justice League. But then they cut to a close-up of Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller, and it's like, oh, wow, they actually got those people to be in the thing. That's kind of cool. And then the show continues and it ends. During the previously on, it's a different set of people that show up at the end of Peacemaker season 1.
Truly, I mean, I paused the recap as like my wife pointed out, like, wait a minute, that's not how that season ended. Like, there's been so much discourse over, geez, like I guess they're going to use the multiverse to like figure out how to do this retcon, and then we just change the credits.
We're just rewriting it. We're rewriting. George Orwell 1984. They're rewriting the fabric of history itself through the previously on.
I think it's a brilliant way to handle it, but keep going.
Well, okay, so just to be clear, right? The characters are Superman, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and I think Supergirl.
Supergirl they have several of the characters, much like the same scene in the first season, are clearly not like the actors. Like they're just sort of like faded in silhouettes, faded into black. So they really just reproduce the comedic dynamic of Flash and Aquaman here with new characters, but Superman, Mr. Terrific, and Supergirl are just silhouetted in the back.
I did like how they like the whole previously on like really functions as its own self-contained story, because there's a reference to throwing up in Green Lantern's plane.
Yeah.
And then later on, Green Lantern makes a comment about that. So like they really like made a little kind of short film in the previous on. It was very, very funny. So enjoyed that. Anyway, before we even get to the events of the episode, we should also probably talk about the updated opening title sequence, which is set to Foxy Shazam's Oh Lord. Really curious what your reaction is to this title sequence, Patrick Klepek.
I don't mean to be a downer. I thought it was fine. It seemed like they put a lot of work into it, but I thought the first season's was better, and I actually would have just preferred if the first season's opening credits were just there again. I ended up watching the first season's credits after finishing this episode.
Be like, every time I watch the second season credits, I'm going to picture the first season credits in my mind.
I am. I like the idea conceptually of like doing a different dance number, and it is fun. But there was something so iconic about that first season's that it's like, I don't know if you're going to capture lightning in a bottle a second time. I don't think they did. I think it's fine. But the first one is... First season's is incredible. This one is fine, which is, is all right. But I have to admit, I got to the end and I was a little disappointed.
I would kind of agree in the sense that I like the first season's song better, and also
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. And but what we do here are some things that are true of the second season opening credits, right? Like it's more, I think, ambitious than the first season's opening credits. Like there's the set is more elaborate, it seems to me. There are more people / characters in it. The choreography is a little more elaborate. We meet characters that are going to be appear later on in the season that have not even shown up yet. And yeah, I think they were really going for something like of a grander scale than with first season. But the problem is, I would kind of agree. Like so far, I'm not preferring the second season opening credits yet. Maybe it'll grow on me. Maybe it'll grow on me. We'll see. Okay. As the episode kicks off, Chris is trying out for the Justice Gang, which is financed by Maxwell Lord. Again, minor spoilers for Superman here, but we met those characters. We met Maxwell Lord in the background in Superman.
Yeah, James Gunn's brother.
James Gunn's brother. Yeah, and he's on the TV in the background, and now he's a character in the Peacemaker show,
and played by. If you're also like, didn't I hear that name in a movie I didn't really like? That was also played by Pedro Pascal in Wonder Woman 1984, like same character. Like here, no one's gonna remember that. But it doesn't really matter. But it is interesting that character has come back so quickly, but now played by James Gunn, who's been in a bunch of stuff, right? He also was the on set like Rocket Raccoon. He played Weasel like on set for the motion capture in Suicide Squad. So like he does a ton of stuff in James Gunn's productions, but this is the first time that he's sort of like present physically, as I expect to be sort of a pretty important character going forward.
Yeah, but during the audition, Peacemaker discovers he can actually hear what they're saying about him in the room, and it's extremely humiliating.
Heartbreak. I can feel bad out for my boy out here.
Yeah, has that ever happened to you where you've like been interviewing for something and then you are exposed to their actual feedback about you?
I was discussing it with my wife while we were watching. I was like, I think I've avoided not something that specific, but like, or the equivalent of like overhearing somebody talking about you and like suffering a quiet humiliation that way. I was like, I can't think of anything in particular, but it sounds awful.
Well, because it's like, what do you do in that situation, right? Like, because if you bring it up, that's also going to be bad. But then if you don't bring it up, then you're in a terrible spot. Like you're psychologically in a terrible spot, right? So it's like, what would you do? Would you just kind of keep hearing it and then try to power through the interview, or would you?
I think you would just power through. I think you just gotta sort of like eat it and just pretend that you didn't hear any of that. That said, I'm also not, in theory, in this version where you or I are experiencing a moment like this, the hostility coming from the person on the other side is like not so crushingly mean as it was in this scene.
Here's what I think you need to do. You need to identify immediately if you hear it, like just right out the gate, like, oh hey, I hear it. You have like 5 seconds.
Two options, right away or not,
right away or never. Right away. You have like maybe 15 to 30 seconds after the first instance to be like, hey, I can hear you guys. And then after that, you're screwed. So like, never hesitate. Act quickly. That is what the advice is. Okay. So anyway,
life advice.
He doesn't get into the Justice Gang. Very sad. Later, Chris meets Harcourt, and the two are not on great terms. Harcourt is having trouble paying the bills, and Chris still pines for her, but she's not having any of it. So later, Chris is so depressed that he hosts an extremely graphic orgy at his house. And I have to say, I was quite tickled by the idea of a parent taking their kid to go see Superman and being like, yeah, oh, great. This is what it means to be human. Hopeful. And then, James Gunn wrote and directed the first episode of Peacemaker Season 2, a direct continuation of the DC Universe. Let's watch it together as a family. Let's all gather on the TV and watch it. I'm just going to say that I do not feel like they adequately warned people. I watched this on Max. I do not feel, or HBO Max, the one to watch for HBO. I do not feel like they adequately warned people about how graphic that this would be.
I almost feel like the episode should have started with like James Gunn, like, hey,
absolutely.
And not this like we're gonna have like different tonal like references and aesthetics for like projects, like that's fine. I think parents will be able to like watch a trailer for Clayface when it's like a hard R like body horror movie with when that comes out next year, make their snap judgment on like whether that like makes sense to their kids. I think it is entirely reasonable, plausible that you would watch Superman, pick up on like the director of Superman is doing a TV series about a character who was in Superman, sit down to watch this and get pretty blindsided by the level of like sex and violence. And that's not me being a prude. I think you and I are falling on the same spot where it's like, you have to set expectations accordingly and also like set homework accordingly. Like that's also what makes this show and the dance it does with its importance in the world, like kind of even weightier, because it's one thing to say we don't want to make the like everything homework, but if you are excluding a huge amount of your audience by virtue of making this like adult oriented or adult only content, then you got to be really careful with how much you're seeding in here, because you're essentially saying you shouldn't watch this, and you can't, or your parents might be saying you can't watch this. And I think for me, like I there's not a chance I'd let my like 8-year-old watch Peacemaker. It's just not in the realm of conversation. But I'm with you. I don't think there was adequate setup. And it's John Cena. Like he's like one of those popular people in the world. Like John Cena, the guy who's done more Make-A-Wish things than like anyone on the planet. Like that guy.
He has fulfilled more Make-A-Wish wishes than any other human being on Earth. And so, honestly, I would say a similar case to look for is Sausage Party Foodtopia on Amazon Prime, which I have been enjoying season 2 greatly. I seem to be the only person I know who either is watching that show or is admitting to watching that show. I'm having a blast with that show, but there is extremely graphic sexual material
Yeah.
between food items in that show. And in season 1, they actually like did a good. I thought they did a decent job of warning people, like saying, "Hey, like this is not for kids. Yes, it looks like it's animated for kids." And there was one episode that was even more graphic than the other episodes. That they even put a special like warning at the top. They're like, FYI, this is an extremely graphic episode.
Even for the people who are horny for the vegetables fucking each other, you need to be careful, like with this episode.
All right, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And that episode will haunt me for a very, very long time. So anyway, I think just a little heads up of like, hey, viewer discretion is advised, you know, like you don't need to go like super wide, you don't need to go ham, just a little bit extra effort, because a ton of people might have taken their kids to go see Superman just a month ago. You know?
So I'd be fascinated. You know, please write in if you experience some version of this. Like my kids are only exposed to marketing through the stuff that I show them, really, right? So they're watching ads-free YouTube. So they don't get a lot of commercials. They don't watch a lot of traditional TV. We sit down and watch a lot of trailers, but I'm curating that, or it's like we're watching it on you know, IGN's like YouTube. Like it's just they're not getting exposed to certain stuff that like Peacemaker never came up, despite I brought my kids to Superman. They had a wonderful time. We're really invested in the movie, excited to learn that Supergirl was going to be like the next film, but like no questions came up Peacemaker. But my kids are also 5 and about to turn 9. When you start to creep just like a little bit older, where it's like you know, preteen or young teen, where okay, maybe there's a world where like they're picking up on this stuff on their own. I'm fascinated if anyone had conversations with their kids about whether they were like, hey, I'll watch this season and get back to you, and whether you can actually watch it.
And then quickly decided
and then
no.
5 minutes in, it's like, all right, there's an orgy.
I was just talking with Dan Gavosden, who's going to be recapping Peacemaker for decodingtv.com. By the way, be sure to subscribe to decodingtv.com. It's free if you want to get those recaps. And he was saying that he thought Superman was quite intense for kids. The James Gunn Superman. I'm curious how you felt about that, because again, minor spoiler here for Superman, but like somebody does get killed in a fairly brutal fashion. In that film.
Yes, the Lex Luthor sequence. I'll just say that definitely caught me and my kids off guard, but they were fine. Frankly, they were more traumatized by thinking the many times. I think I maybe told you that. I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, but they're new to watching. We watched Fantastic Four and Superman in theaters, and they are naive enough to storytelling that when a character is put in danger, they wholeheartedly believe what the movie is telling them, which is that these characters are about to die and you should take this very seriously. Where if any of us were to watch, you know, a major superhero in a debut film, like, okay, they're not going to kill Superman like in the first movie. Like, that's just not how this stuff works. But that's not what my 5-year-old thought. And my 5-year-old had to be removed from the theater when she thought Superman was going to die. But they had a good time. But I do agree that that's a kid-by-kid sort of decision.
Yeah.
It was more that we couldn't leave the 5-year-old out more than I thought she was ready for it. But she was a trooper, like really did enjoy it. Like, so kid-by-kid decision. But I agree that Gunn skirts a line on Superman. Like I guess what I'll say is Fantastic Four is also PG-13. Sure doesn't feel like it. Superman like earns that like PG, earns the PG-13 like rating between the Green Lantern, you know, middle fingers, which my 8-year-old was delighted in, and obviously the Lex Luthor sequence that we're talking about. So I agree, but it's Peacemaker is on a whole other plane of violence than Superman.
It also raises the question of whether Gunn is going to be the perfect choice to shepherd the DC universe into its next era. In my opinion, this is so much better than what Zack Snyder's version of this would have been. Like, you know, I was again arguing with Dan Gavosden, whose recaps you should read at decodingtv.com, about like Man of Steel. Like, I just started sending him scenes from Man of Steel on YouTube. Like the scene where he snaps Zod's neck, the scene where Kevin Costner died. Like that is so much, in my opinion, that is so much more upsetting like just the overall milieu and
Great
the
soundtrack
message.
though.
Great score by Hans Zimmer.
I agree, but I think in like Gunn's ideal world, all of his movies would be like a soft R or like a really hard PG-13.
Right.
That is just the mode that he operates in.
Yeah.
And he's able to get away with it because he's also so earnest and human and wears his heart on his sleeve. And I think that's what allows him to, I don't know, it softens the edge, but he comes from trauma. He comes from horror exploitation films. And you see that through line throughout, like, you know, his stuff, even in Guardians of the Galaxy, like, you know, basically opens with like a bunch of sex jokes, like with Star-Lord and his ship. And so that's all there, but I'm with you that there's like Clayface, which is like clearly like hard R body horror. And then it's like Superman and Peacemaker feel like they're on the same tier. Like Clayface elevated, like Superman and Peacemaker kind of hovering around the same area, and yet excludes an enormous amount of the Superman audience in terms of whether it's probably appropriate for them to watch it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it evolves.
I'm here for the swings, though. I love James Gunn, though, so you know, I'll just deal with that as a parent, and I hope he just makes what he wants to make because he's clearly very interested in the material, and I think the DC stuff lines up with his sensibilities more than Marvel did.
This one definitely not for the kids, and I'm curious how much for the kids the new DC universe will be in general, right? So we'll see. Anyway, at one point during the orgy, Peacemaker goes into this hidden lair, which like earlier in the episode he had kind of gone into, but now it's 6 months later, and this hidden area is described in the previously on as a quantum unfolding storage area that leads to a dimensional nodule outside normal space. End quote.
Do we remember why does he have this? I know it was in season 1. Do you remember?
His dad made it for him. Like his dad,
so his dad made it.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, his dad like builds him objects.
Okay.
His white supremacist father Augie,
right,
builds him this dimensional space thing. I believe. I might get that wrong. Apologies.
I'll double check. I think that lines up with my memories, but I was trying to remember like where did he actually get, because this lines up so neatly with the plot line from Superman. But
right.
Anyway.
It does.
I feel like that plotline of Superman is influenced by this plotline from the original season of Peacemaker, and that's part of the connective tissue he's building between.
Anyway, he wanders around this space and finds a door that leads to a house that is basically another dimension. His father and brother are still alive. His father didn't become a white supremacist. They actually all live together, and they fight crime as a group called Top Trio.
Such a good name.
Why do you think that's such a good name?
It's so corny. I love it. It fits with the corny like family aesthetic, like is the vibe of that house. But like Top Trio is just such a like Gunn's really carving out some kick-ass names like Justice Gang, Top Trio. Like there's something very deliberate about the kind of corny nature of the names he's picking for these sort of like team ups. That is, I'm really into.
All right, so yeah, while he kind of like learns the details of this, it's like wow, instead of his father training him to kill at a young age and then him killing his brother Keith by accident, they actually all love each other now. They can say I love you. Things are great between them. It's wonderful. It's this wonderful alternate universe. Also, apparently in this dimension, he and Harcourt were dating, like officially. Have no idea how the hell that happened, given the events that have unfolded, but I'm sure we'll get some explanation. And while Chris is exploring his doppelganger's room, his doppelganger returns. His alternate dimension self returns. They have a big fight. They head into the dimensional hideout portal space thing. And Chris ends up killing his doppelganger as the episode comes to a close. Couple things to point out about this. He uses these like throwing stars that come out his helmet that look like horrible. I would not want to interact with those ever. Those look extremely painful.
Hellraiser sort of object being shot into his back there.
Yeah, and and then he impales this guy on a roof like metal stalactite thing. There's like a cool fight scene where it's like John Cena fighting himself, very well done. And then he kills him, and now he has a choice to make of what does he do? Does he go? Does he just like take the place of this guy's life, or does he go back to his old dimension? And honestly, I think there's something really fascinating about the fact that Peacemaker in this scene / episodes is choosing between these two lives potentially, and this show itself straddles two separate versions of the DC universe, right? Like it's a I don't know if it's supposed to be a reference to that, but like it does strike me as kind of fascinating. But really, Patrick, the biggest takeaway from this is why you don't do co-working shared spaces, right? Like this is because if you share your space with someone, you might end up bumping into the wrong guy and killing them on a ceiling stalactite thing.
It's true.
Yeah.
Always a potential problem.
Absolutely. What do you think about this sequence of events, Patrick?
I was pretty taken aback that something that seemed pretty logical, which is that one of these versions of Peacemaker is killed, happens in the first episode. I sort of expected like a bunch of the song and dance of this season once you sort of introduce the idea that he could go to this more idealistic world. Like, oh, we're going to hop in between there. He's going to, maybe the other Peacemaker is going to get stuck in his, we're going to kind of, that's going to be kind of the dynamic where he has to hide him. And like, they end up working together. I was pretty like, he just killed him. And now he has made a profound impact, not just on, opening up the door to him being able to go to this world and assume this different version, this more idealistic version of what he would want his life to be. But also he's really screwed up life for that world, right? Like these people were doing a lot of good.
Yeah, they were doing great.
Was really happy. And you have now, I expect, I now suspect like a huge part of the season is going to be about like cycles of trauma and like the violence that like you experience in your life and how that is inflicted on others to just like perpetuate like the violence and trauma. Like there's a lot of really interesting ways this can go. And I think it's the more interesting I think it's much more interesting that we are getting our original Peacemaker retconned into the new DCU and also getting this like what if scenario. Like it's of the like different ways to do a multiverse story, which are obviously like pretty pat and kind of like done out over the last like 5-6 years. This seems very ripe for a lot of really interesting storytelling. So I was pretty shocked that he died to start, but I was like, oh, I feel that's confident storytelling and makes me interested to see what happens when he walks through that door.
Arguably, they have done in one episode something that's more interesting than a lot of how the MCU has dealt with the multiverse so far.
It's consequences. Like it's actual concrete, tangible consequences as a result of a high concept premise that has you immediately going, what else is going to happen? And we have a whole season to find out the consequences of that.
Absolutely. Okay. So that is the Peacemaker storyline for this episode. A lot of cool, interesting stuff there. But let's talk about a lot of the other things that happened in the episode. We learned that Harcourt has been blacklisted from every intelligence agency, and that's why she can't get a job and she's at the end of her rope. And as a result, she goes drinking at a bar and has a very, very cool fight scene. A lot of the hand-to-hand fight scenes and combat in the show are really well done.
Yeah.
And this was no exception. I guess, if I was married to Jennifer Holland, I would probably want to show off her fighting skills, so I understand why James Gunn has put this scene in the show. I don't think it really does that much to advance the plot at all. And it does have some good Bud Light product placement in there. But anyway, really cool, well done. And it shows you that Harcourt continues to be a total badass. Any other thoughts of the Harcourt subplot in this episode?
I mean, I think it's trying to establish the two main characters of the show anchored at the lowest possible moments. They are both, whether or not the show ends up in the same place that it arrived at the end of season 1, which is that these two are together. I actually suspect we're going to get a repeat of, and I actually kind of hope this is where the show goes, which is mild spoilers for the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, but Guardians of the Galaxy avoids like getting a traditional romance together at the end and allows for a sense of wanting. And just because two sexy people are on screen together and would traditionally be matched up and be together, that doesn't mean that's how it plays out, because life is different than how that works out. And so maybe they end up in the action figures kiss at the end of season 2 of Peacemaker. I wouldn't put it past the show, but I also wonder if the show is interested in something a little bit different. And Gunn has shown a history of eschewing traditional romances in his storytelling.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I will say that the opening credits sequence does imply that there like a romantic subplot between the two of them will be a pretty significant part of the show. Also, like, I'm just gonna put this out there.
I think they might have sex, David. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be together at the end.
Also, I'm gonna put this out there. I almost feel like the show. It's interesting you describe them as the two main characters. I almost feel like the two main characters are Chris Smith and Leota Adebayo. Like, I actually feel like it's almost like them as a two-hander. Like a sort of, they're the main, sort of driving force, and then Harcourt is like a kind of side potential.
I consider
love
her kind
interest.
of paired up in the Peacemaker storyline. Like she is the main character of the Peacemaker. If there's like two lanes of like it's Peacemaker and then Harcourt, and I feel like she anchors the other part of the show to a huge degree.
I will say I'm a little bit bummed that they kind of just did away with all the stuff from the end of season 1. Yes, I know, like it's implied that they've had more encounters in the 6 months since the end of season 1, and like, but I just thought that where season 1 ended was so lovely, with the two of them on at the hospital bed, and like she kind of reaches out for his hand, and he kind of takes her hand in his, and this is just a very nice moment that shows, hey, they're not necessarily romantically involved, but like their friendship is developing, and there's a like warmth and affection there. And it's all gone by the time this episode begins, basically. So that's a little bit of a bummer for me. But hey, I trust that they're going to do something interesting with it. We'll see. We meet Rick Flag Sr. in this episode, and he makes references to the events of Superman. He says, oh yeah, that Luthor thing. I like how he says that Luthor thing, by the way, because I guess I just feel like if a dimensional rift opened up in the city, you wouldn't need to reference it as that Luthor thing. You'd just be like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be like that this major thing that happened, right?
I guess, but one of my takeaways from Superman was that
this stuff is happening all the time.
This stuff is happening all the time.
It's happening all the time. So you need to be specific about which interdimensional rift. I kid. I'm not. I don't think it's actually.
But I'm with you. I'm with you. It's new for this sort of method of storytelling. For sure.
I guess the reason I kind of give the show shit about it is because it feels like it's like, hey, do you see? We're tying it into the last thing you saw, in a kind of very obvious way. But,
yes.
Anyway, in the universe of this so as far as I understand, in the universe of this show, Rick Flag's son was killed by Peacemaker still, even though like that was a different DC universe at the time, right?
Yeah, it's like this Peacemaker season 2 cleans up like Peacemaker's involvement in the universe and its role, but does not go further back. Maybe we'll learn more on the time, but like, is Margot Robbie's like are the is King? Are these? How many of those characters are still relevant? How many of those events like still happened? And
maybe some of that has to be addressed. Where is Harley Quinn in all this? Is my question. But anyway, so he presumably is still pretty pissed at Peacemaker for killing his son. And he also doesn't trust Economos to monitor Peacemaker, which is his current assignment. So he wants to assign someone else to monitor Peacemaker, and we'll see how that unfolds. All right, there are also multiple references to metahumans in the episode, which I thought was interesting. They're really kind of metahumans, a concept that was referenced in Justice League, the old DC universe, but like has been really properly introduced or like prominently mentioned, I'll say, in the newest Superman. And so they're really trying to like establish the language of the new DC universe. And so just wanted to mention that as well. I have a section here in my notes that's just comic book references that occur in Peacemaker. There are a lot, so this is not exhaustive at all. In the alternate universe, Peacemaker is supposed to meet Peacemaker meets his brother Keith in the alternate universe, and Keith says, hey, I thought you were at Bloodhaven. And for those who don't know, Bloodhaven, here's reading from the wiki. Once nicknamed Asbestos Town, USA, Bloodhaven started out as a whaling town, rapidly giving way to highly industrial sectors, which then fell into urban decay as businesses collapsed or moved out of the area during the Depression. By the way, really sad backstory for Bloodhaven, which is a fictional place. Anyway, it's approximately a 33-minute drive from Gotham City.
Okay.
And Nightwing moved here initially to help Batman solve a string of murders related to a thoroughly corrupt police force, only to remain there to carve out his own reputation away from either Batman or the Titans. End quote. So it's like kind of Nightwing's area is Bloodhaven. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. There is, you see like newspaper headline articles. Top trio saves Gotham from Ultra Humanite. For those who don't know, Ultra Humanite is a supervillain appearing in American comic books published by DC Comics. I'm reading here from Wikipedia. He first appeared as a recurring adversary of Superman and was among the first villains faced by him. He was designed to be the polar opposite of Superman. While Superman is a hero with superhuman strength, Ultra Humanite is a criminal mastermind who has a crippled body but a highly advanced intellect. Ultra Humanite served as Superman's nemesis until the introduction of Superman's arch nemesis, the mad scientist Lex Luthor. End quote. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. And finally, the only other thing I wanted to mention, or actually two other things I want to mention. One is when Chris Smith is going to audition for the Justice Gang, a woman storms out of the audition. I'm not sure. I believe that is a reference to White Rabbit.
Yeah, it is.
Who is a character named Jaina Hudson. Jaina Hudson, who is able to physically separate herself into two beings. The White Rabbit alter ego and her normal Jaina persona. As the White Rabbit, she has an entirely different personality and appearance. Her duplication power allows her to be in two different places at the same time. End quote. So, just some cool references. And also, canonically, Maxwell Lord was commenting on her camel toe the whole time during the audition. That is what we are led to understand. That's what James Gunn is doing to the comic characters, folks.
Well, it's all you're going to get a Batman for a hot minute, it seems. So. You also, I'm not sure if you picked up on this. I hope in my life to someday hate someone as much as James Gunn hates Jared Leto. Okay. Did you pick up on this in the show?
No, tell me.
So James Gunn has in the past publicly...
Well, just to be even, to take a step back, Jared Leto played Joker in the David Ayer Suicide Squad,
correct,
which is the predecessor for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. All right, go.
But that is unrelated to James Gunn's dislike of...
Really? Because I think it might be somewhat related. Anyway, go ahead.
No, he's talked publicly of how he believes Jared Leto is a sex pest and targets very young women in Hollywood. I don't know how much of his Twitter account has been purged, but there are plenty of screen captures you can look up of James Gunn like calling this stuff out. And James Gunn or Jared Leto is the lead singer in a pretty popular pop punk band called 30 Seconds to Mars. And in this episode, there is a sequence where Peacemaker is talking to Harcourt about like kind of making fun of the music that's playing in her car. And like after she was like mad and like, hitting the dashboard, and he jokes about like a couple of bands that like, that you would hear like that she was playing, and he's like, blah, 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 and 30 Seconds to Mars. And she says something equivalent of like
30 Seconds to Mars or some shit. I was going to kick its ass then, but you two seem like you're on good terms. So.
I am not on good terms with 30 Seconds to Mars. How dare you?
Yeah, fuck that band. And like, you would only do that if you were coding in to the second the second chapter in you are the head of DC Studios. You are like tasked with doing like one of the most important jobs in Hollywood, this incredible high wire act. And you've picked up your water bottle.
Yeah, you have tons of scrutiny. Tons of scrutiny is on you. Like everyone's watching your every move, right? You don't want to piss anyone off.
I think there's a little bit of haterade in here. And he puts in just a fucking dig to Jared Leto. It's beautiful. I mean, Jared Leto deserves it. Guy seems like a scumbag, but I cackled because I come from an era where like 30 Seconds to Mars and all these. I knew Jared Leto as a musician before I knew him as an actor. And
wow,
I knew people that like toured with him. He was a famous stay away from that guy, like had a rep like going long before he went Hollywood. And so to have like, I've heard about this guy being a bad person for most of my life. And now I'm still hearing about it
Yeah.
in Peacemaker season 2. Just beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, he does seem like the worst. I don't even know about all the sex pest stuff. I just know about how he behaved on set.
Yeah.
During this Suicide Squad movie.
His behavior extends to all elements of the human existence.
He is single-handedly making me less excited to see Tron Ares.
Dude,
this fall.
I saw Nine Inch Nails this week, and they played their excellent like single track that's on because they're doing the music as Nine Inch Nails for Tron Ares, and that movie's got some incredible looking visuals, and then every other scene is like, God, you couldn't have gotten some other generic white guy like in this movie. There's a whole lot of them. Come on.
Indeed. Final other reference I want to mention. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think this is accurate, right? Is the code that Peacemaker puts into the door is 261011. That's the passcode for the quantum unfolding storage area. Reading here from Reddit, which is quoting from Wiki, the code is an homage to Robert Patrick, the actor who portrays Augie, as Patrick is the first charter holder of the 101st chapter of the Booze Fighters Motorcycle Club, being BF1011. Since B is the second letter of the alphabet and F is the sixth letter, that would then become 261011, end quote. So, just a little, that is an extremely subtle reference for you. But that is what I believe that is a reference to.
You know what? There was someone on that set that was like, we got to come up with a code, and like someone like whatever PA, or maybe it was James Gunn, but like whoever had that one, like hat tip, that stuff's beautiful.
I don't know. I mean, like that code required like work. They had to do they did close-ups of every number. That's a different camera setup, or maybe they did like they shot it in 8K and they punched in. I doubt it.
Sure.
I think that's a separate camera setup for every number. So somebody wanted that to be put in there. Anyway, all right. So those are a bunch of thoughts on Peacemaker Season 2 premiere. I thought it was a blast. I'm so excited about the show. I'm so excited about covering the show.
Same.
And just like we're seeing a new comic book universe be born before us, right? And like, how does it look? How does it feel? How much extremely graphic, full frontal male nudity are they going to show in it? These are all questions that this show is going to help us answer. Right?
I think one thing, like, in the early days of the MCU, like anyone would like leave the new movie, go home, and like, what are all the Easter eggs that I missed because I'm not like deep in the comic lore. I haven't done that in years. Like, there's just too much Marvel stuff. I don't need to know the Easter eggs in the 47th thing that I've watched in the Marvel universe, even if I still enjoy that world. But like, that's what I'm doing with Peacemaker. That's what I did with Superman. It was like, it's fun to be excited, even though I'm rooting for Marvel to like find their footing again. And I think they have, but we'll see where they fit in the long term. It's just fun to be in a universe where everything feels like new and open and could be anything. And there's just so many unanswered questions about what this universe is that I'm excited to have partially answered across the season.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.